time I roll through LA, Hollywood, San Diego, Oceanside, I get nothing but love from the people. I tell you this to tell you Cali like a second home to me. I always have a...
Gentlemen, what is up? It is the Monkman, Marl, Kalone, and this is Season 1, Episode 24. We will be talking about a topic today that is interesting to me, simply because DC Comics and Batman are my favorite comic book series of all time. And listen, we're going to be talking about multiple movies here and discussing this feminist agenda and role swapping, where we're taking traditional male characters and male designs on these films, and they are swapping these characters in these long-standing series to female characters. So let's jump right into it and talk about the news that has come out the last couple days. The first piece of news would be that the new Batman film, I think it's slated for next year release, has finally picked their Batman. Now, as you remember, Ben Affleck was supposed to star, write, and direct this movie. With the controversy around him and some of the unhappiness around him playing the character, he finally decided to step down from directing it, and then it was just going to be writing and starring in. The next step he took was, now he was not going to be writing the film and only playing Batman. Finally, news broke that he wasn't even going to play the character now. He basically had been run out of the role and the movie itself and decided to step down and step away from it. They got a new director, they got a new writer, they've written a new script. Apparently it's not quite finished, but they're close to finishing it. They got the new director, and this director has picked Robert Pattinson of the Twilight films, the glittery vampire, as people call him. I wouldn't know because I've never seen the fucking series. I have no interest in seeing it. But apparently they've picked this goofy kid to play the new Batman. I cannot think of a worse choice that comes to mind in Hollywood right now to play Batman. He is lanky, he is too skinny, and frankly, he's too feminine to play one of the more masculine comic book characters in the DC universe. I think it's going to be a disaster. But on top of that, we have even worse news. Since that story broke a couple days ago, we've also learned that the villains of the movie will be the Penguin, Catwoman, if I could talk, Catwoman, and possibly the Riddler. Now, we've seen these characters before in incarnations in the 90s and also previous Adam West stuff. But the worst part about that is not the fact that we're having to see the same villains again, but and to step that back a minute, there's a whole robust catalog of villains that they could have dug into. So that part's a little disappointing, but the worst part is that the Penguin may be gender swapped. And you did hear me correctly there. Apparently, there is consideration by the writer and director to gender swap the Penguin from a male to a female for this new movie. Can you fucking believe this? It wasn't bad enough that they decided in 2016 to release a shitfest of a movie, the Ghostbusters remake with the all-female cast. Wasn't bad enough that they did that. Wasn't bad enough that they did an Oceans remake with the Oceans 8 all-female cast last year. But now they've decided to move into the comic book realm, and they're starting to destroy male characters in the comic books. I also understand that they will be having some of their first gay characters coming up soon as well. But the big issue here is the gender swap of the Penguin. Listen, if you take a look at the numbers of the 2016 Ghostbusters remake and see what happened with that disaster. The feminists were pushing the agenda on this, even though the angry video game nerd had done a video which ended up hitting ultimately millions and millions of views, slamming this Ghostbusters movie before it even came out and saying what a shitfest it was going to be. And he was right. But the other issue is, financially, the movie was not viable. They talked about it was going to be a huge success and be a tremendous power for women and feminism and da-da-da-da-da, right? The movie had a $144 million budget. $144 million budget. Biggest of all three of the Ghostbuster films. It only ultimately went on to do $229 million at the worldwide box office. That is what you call an absolute catastrophic failure. You have to take that $229 million number and divide it in half, because half goes to the studio and half goes to the movie houses. So right off the bat, the movie lost millions on its production budget. That doesn't even take into account the advertising and promotional budget that was attached to it as well. So this movie literally could have lost $100 million plus, because the director decided that he wanted to get on a feminist bandwagon and kick, and they were bad-mouthing men before this movie even came out. So that's the first example. The second example, let's talk about Ocean's 8, the remake. This came out last year in the summer. Now, keep in mind, this is 2018 dollar value here. $297 million in change at the box office. Sounds like a great number, right? Until you take into account what the previous films did. Now, we're talking about movies that came out years and years ago, right? These movies didn't just come out 2 or 3 years ago. Some of these movies came out clear. The first one came out clear back in 2001, and then 2004 and 2007. So all of these movies are more than a decade old, and the very first one is nearly 2 decades old. So now keep in mind that number I just gave you. Ocean's 8 Remake 2018, $297 million and change at the box office. Okay? Then you take the 2001 Ocean's 11 original movie. 2001, $450 million and change at the box office. You take the next movie in the series. This would have been 2004. This is Ocean's 12. $362 million and change. Finally, you take the third and final in that part of the series, Ocean's 13. This released in 2007. $311 million and change. Now, all these movies, like I said, are between 1 decade and 2 decades old. That tells you right there how much of a loss the studios are taking on these films. They're taking a bath on these new films by instilling this feminist agenda and propaganda in these regurgitated remakes. It's bad enough that they're throwing these regurgitated films at us in the first place, even if it was with men. even if it was men in the original roles. That would be bad enough. But the fact that on top of that, they take another shit on the general public and they decide to gender swap the roles and gender swap the entire film because they want to feed us this feminist agenda, this girl power that's supposedly taking over the world, which it isn't. They want to continue to feed us and propagate this bullshit, right? Well, the general public, in most terms, is not buying it. These films, although the Ocean's 8 film did make money, it by no means was a financial success, especially in comparison to the other 3 films. Now, they've decided that they're going to take a shit on Batman. So here's my thoughts and advice on that, gentlemen. The only way that Hollywood as I like to call it, as I've worked in Hollywood, I've been in a few movies myself, and I've also directed some stuff, but I'm not part of that mainstream Hollywood. Here's my thoughts on everything. If Hollywood wants to continue to release this garbage and shit on us as moviegoers, the only way that we're going to be able to fight back is with our money. So I recommend that every man out there does not see any of these movies that do this gender and role swapping anymore. If you have a girlfriend, if you have a wife, do not let them drag you to this. We have to send a message to Hollywood that this bullshit needs to end. If you want to give women their own roles in original movies, and you want to make them their own original superheroes or comic book characters or this or that, fine. By all means do it. But quit taking a shit on these characters, these iconic characters that we've watched our entire lives, and not only do you regurgitate the same stories and the same shit that you've already given us before for a cash grab, but on top of that, you add the feminist propagation to it and do a bunch of gender role swapping. We're tired of it. The only way we can make them change this is to not support any of these films and make them financially not viable to do any more, period. Alright, that's my little spiel for the day. Gentlemen, let me know your thoughts on the topic. If you think I'm flat out wrong, let me know in the comments. I'm always up for a good debate and discussion. If you think I'm right, throw me some comments down there. And please share the shows. I need to get my numbers up. I'm having fun doing this, but I want to reach more people. So share the shows, share the episodes, like them, subscribe to them if you haven't. Share this off in different men's MGTOW groups, men's group, whatever you have to do. Help get the word out on the show for me if you would. And as I'm signing off, as always, I have to tell you, gentlemen, stay the fuck red-pilled.
Drop the top as I head into the setting sun. Cruising toward Cali cause I wanna be a beach bum. Got thoughts of me living like a nomad. A grass shack from my oceanside pad. Daydreaming as the wind blows through my head. Got the world in my hands, don't live without a care. Hit 100 girlfriends dead. She sings Sean Keith, said baby take me there. Game time I do my damage to a blocker. Cops try to stop it but they won't recognize